Stop. Because the most technical striker in women's MMA history has just aimed directly at the undefeated PFL superstar. And this wasn't subtle or hypothetical, it was direct. Valentina Shevchenko, the two-time UFC Flyweight champion, has made it clear she's watching Dakota Deva. And she's coming. This isn't prospect versus contender. This is pound-for-pound royalty targeting the undefeated hype machine.
Amazing fight. I think it would be something that fans would love to see, and definitely me being the person
Let's understand who is speaking. Valentina Shevchenko, the current UFC Women's Flyweight champion and two-time title holder, is ranked number 1 in the UFC Women's pound-for-pound rankings as of March 2026. She defended her belt twice in 2025, including a dominant unanimous decision over Zhang Weili at UFC 322 at Madison Square Garden, and a gritty victory over Manon Fiorot at UFC 315. That win tied her with Amanda Nunes for the most wins in UFC Women's Championship history. This is not hype, this is legacy, and she is now publicly discussing Dakota Deva. When it comes to danger, Valentina is a sniper with 54.8% striking accuracy, elite counter-striking, and devastating spinning kicks, absorbing just 1.81 significant strikes per minute, while landing 3.29, a level of statistical dominance supported by 8 career KO/TKO wins across MMA and a deep Muay Thai pedigree. She doesn't rush, she dismantles. But Dakota Deva is chaos in motion, an undefeated 15-0 2024 PFL Women's Flyweight champion, a Muay Thai clinch killer with devastating knees, fast flurries, and body shot finishes who doesn't outpoint opponents. She overwhelms them. Valentina Shevchenko is still active, still dominant, and still evolving, with her likely next challenger being Natalia Silva after a victory over Rose Namajunas at UFC 324, while she is also openly entertaining a champion versus champion clash with Kayla Harrison. However, mentioning Dakota is different because Dakota is not in the UFC. She is the face of the PFL, and that alone creates cross-promotional tension that rarely happens unless something significant is brewing. Timing also matters, as Dakota is currently recovering from a hand injury that forced her to withdraw from her February 2026 fight, while Valentina remains fully active, fully defending, and fully dominant. So is this a warning or a reminder? Because when a reigning UFC champion openly acknowledges an undefeated PFL star, it is more than casual mention. It creates psychological pressure. Technically, the matchup is fascinating. Dakota's clinch knees versus Valentina's check right hook, Dakota's pressure versus Valentina's counter timing. If Dakota rushes, Valentina punishes the entries. If Valentina stays too patient, Dakota accumulates damage. The biggest difference is experience under 5-round UFC championship pressure, which Valentina has lived through repeatedly, while Dakota has not, but youth and momentum are unpredictable forces. Valentina Shevchenko does not speak recklessly. She calculates. So when she openly discusses Dakota, it is not random. It is awareness. As the UFC champion sees the undefeated PFL star rising and acknowledges it instead of ignoring it. That makes it feel like a warning. And now the question remains, does the veteran sniper shut down the hype, or does the undefeated hurricane shock the queen? Because if this fight ever gets signed, it is not just champion versus champion. It is era versus evolution, and someone's aura will disappear.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. Go! I mean, that was a perfectly placed.
Down to that elbow. He's in trouble. Dakota gets him up to the body again for a championship.
Valentina Shevchenko is still active, still dominant, and still evolving, with her likely next challenger being Natalia Silva after a victory over Rose Namajunas at UFC 324, while she is also openly entertaining a champion versus champion clash with Kayla Harrison. However, mentioning Dakota is different because Dakota is not in the UFC. She is the face of the PFL, and that alone creates cross-promotional tension that rarely happens unless something significant is brewing. Timing also matters, as Dakota is currently recovering from a hand injury that forced her to withdraw from her February 2026 fight, while Valentina remains fully active, fully defending, and fully dominant. So is this a warning or a reminder? Because when a reigning UFC champion openly acknowledges an undefeated PFL star, it is more than casual mention. It creates psychological pressure. Technically, the matchup is fascinating. Dakota's clinch knees versus Valentina's check right hook. Dakota's pressure versus Valentina's counter timing. If Dakota rushes, Valentina punishes the entries. If Valentina stays too patient, Dakota accumulates damage. The biggest difference is experience under 5-round UFC championship pressure, which Valentina has lived through repeatedly, while Dakota has not, but youth and momentum are unpredictable forces. Valentina Shevchenko does not speak recklessly. She calculates. So when she openly discusses Dakota, it is not random. It is awareness. As the UFC champion sees the undefeated PFL star rising and acknowledges it instead of ignoring it. That makes it feel like a warning. And now the question remains, does the veteran sniper shut down the hype, or does the undefeated hurricane shock the queen? Because if this fight ever gets signed, it is not just champion versus champion. It is era versus evolution, and someone's aura will disappear.
Female right now, who would you want to go with?
Valentina Shevchenko right now. I want to be at the top. You know, I'm still 26. She's been around for a long time.
Right now, I'm not too sure that Shevchenko is the best 125er there is.
She made it clear, Valentina, I'm coming for you. She knows Valentina Shevchenko has been at the top for nearly a decade and respects her resume, but she also sees the physical reality of time and fighting. At 37, Valentina is no longer the same version who once looked untouchable, and in a younger fighter's eyes, that gap becomes a defining storyline. Dakota, at 26, is undefeated, fresh, violent, and finishing opponents in a way that suggests a rising force in the division, while Valentina has been through deeper, more grueling championship battles, including close fights and wars that tested her durability. The narrative being pushed is simple but controversial. Youth versus experience, speed and hunger versus legacy and ring IQ, with an 11-year age gap shaping how people interpret momentum. Dakota is not only calling out Valentina, but also positioning herself against the entire UFC hierarchy, claiming she wants top competition, and intends to prove herself against the sport's greatest champions, turning the call-out into a broader statement about taking over the division rather than just chasing one fight.
Put away.
If Dakota were to shock the world and beat Valentina Shevchenko, the headlines would go far beyond a simple upset. It would be a seismic shift in MMA. It wouldn't just be a win for Dakota. It would be a statement that shakes the UFC's dominance and elevates the PFL's reputation overnight, proving it can produce the most dangerous flyweight on the planet. Even figures like Kayla Harrison have acknowledged Dakota's rise, calling her a young, hungry killer capable of finishing anyone, while other fighters have described her as unpredictable, violent, and a serious problem for anyone standing across from her. Valentina, however, built her legacy on precision, discipline, and cold technical mastery, becoming one of the most feared and respected champions in UFC history. But now she would be facing something different. Not just another UFC contender she has studied for years, but a 26-year-old assassin from another promotion who carries no respect for legacy, politics, or hierarchy. That clash creates the ultimate nightmare scenario. If Dakota would defeat Valentina, it would disrupt the UFC's dominance narrative, shift momentum toward the PFL, and potentially redefine the future of women's MMA in the end. It comes down to belief versus legacy, whether Dakota represents the future of the sport or whether Valentina, a 37-year-old legend, still has enough precision, experience, and control to shut down the storm. Because once those words are spoken in the cage, the entire MMA world has no choice but to pay attention.
I mean, I could have the title if I went there.
Alexa Grasso, Valentina Shevchenko.
Yeah, I think I could.
That is confidence.
They say to me, you know, she's running through all these girls because they're not very good. But if you put these girls against other people, they have close fights. Whereas when you put them with me, I finish them early. So I make...
Dakota Deva just dropped a bombshell that has the MMA world spinning. Even with Conor McGregor reportedly trying to pull her into the UFC and Dana White allegedly showing interest, fans believe the deal was close. But she shut the door completely. Instead of crossing over, Dakota has doubled down on her position and effectively lit the fuse on a potential PFL versus UFC tension that fans can't ignore. This isn't just a career decision anymore. It feels like a statement. And the entire MMA world is now watching closely as the situation escalates and the narrative shifts into something much bigger than just one fighter's future.
Conor McGregor follows me on Twitter. Like, I was told that as well the other day by my brother's friend. So, you know, things like that are like massive.
She is 15-0 with 12 finishes, the face of the PFL, the poster on their billboards, and the star of the promotional machine, consistently pushed as one of their biggest attractions. But here's where it gets controversial. The PFL reportedly did not include her in this year's tournament, leaving the reigning champion sidelined despite her status. Questions immediately followed about why. A mix of politics, matchmaking complications, and the looming pressure of a potential UFC crossover threat all being suggested as possible factors behind the decision.
She's in trouble. Dakota gets him up to the body again.
At BKFC 71, Conor McGregor reportedly spotted Dakota and hugged her, telling her face-to-face, "You're the next big thing, baby." The moment instantly exploded across social media, with fans tagging Dana White and UFC hype accounts declaring her the future of the flyweight division. For many, it looked like the beginning of a fast-track UFC signing story. But that expectation quickly shifted when Dakota delivered a curveball, changing the direction of the entire narrative and proving she isn't following the path everyone assumed for her career.
I get it. It's hard for PFL, you know. They've put all the girls in the tournament, and then now they need to find someone that's going to kind of give me a good competition. They can't give me someone that's, you know, just kind of signed to the PFL and not really had that much experience, because it doesn't make sense. I've just beat Santos very easily. I think that's another thing that I have to understand is, like, if I'd had a 5-round war with Santos, there would have been a few more people in there that would have been more of a match. But
instead of chasing UFC gold or riding Conor McGregor's cosign into the octagon, Dakota confirmed she is staying in the PFL. In her own words, she expressed frustration at the situation, saying she hasn't been given anything concrete yet, and that she left it up to the PFL to decide whether she would be included or not. Now, she is reportedly booked for the July PFL Champion Series card, with no opponent confirmed yet, but one thing is clear: she is not leaving. What nobody is saying out loud is that Dakota Deva has become the PFL's biggest weapon in the women's market, and losing her to the UFC would mean more than just losing a fighter. It would mean losing a core part of their brand identity. That's why UFC interest in Dana White rumors continue to circulate, while behind the scenes the PFL is reportedly determined to hold on tight. If she stays, she remains the face of the division. If she leaves, the women's flyweight scene inside the PFL could collapse overnight. At this point, it's no longer just about Dakota Deva. It's UFC versus PFL in plain sight. With Conor McGregor publicly backing her, Dana White potentially willing to spend big, and the PFL refusing to let go, this is shaping up into one of the most intense fighter tug-of-wars in years.